This happened to me in 2014, on my way to my great-grandparents' house in Goose Creek, South Carolina. We had left in the late morning around 11 a.m. to try and get there before dinner. Our whole reason behind going was for a cruise vacation my great-grandmother had paid for. It was going to be me, my mother, my father, my aunt, my other aunt, my great-grandfather, and my great-grandmother, along with a few other friends of my GGMs. In the car, it was my mother and I, along with most of our luggage. My father was coming a few days later due to work stuff, so we decided to drive out that day to get there early and catch up on family drama and the usual. My mother had just finished packing the car, and she called me down the stairs to get in the car with my bag of entertainment things. I came rushing down, excited to go on a road trip and to see my family since, at that time, they hadn't caused many of the problems that push us apart today. We started our drive on some scenic back roads before getting towards the inner city and hopping onto the highway. In this story, I'm only 7, so I'm still blissfully naive and unaware of many things in the world. I'm also fuzzy on the details of the persons involved, so the descriptions of the clothing and whatnot may be a bit skewed. I was mainly focused on Minecraft and collecting Beanie Boos at the time, rather than the dangers of reality and strange people. After about 2 hours of us being on the road, I told my mom I needed the bathroom. I had drunk about 2 water bottles and my bladder was complaining. Since we were still near the busy city area, there were plenty of gas stations and corner stores we could stop at. My mom asked if I was hungry as well, to which I excitedly said yes, since this meant that I got junk food, which I didn't get often. So we pulled off at an exit, and came across a Quick Trip not long after. I was bouncing out of my seat with excitement, ready to grab my favorite chips and candy and a sugary drink, which I knew my mom would later regret letting me have. We got out of the car, my mom grabbed her purse, and we headed inside to the bathrooms. My mom waited outside patiently for me to use the restroom, and after a few minutes I came out, and we walked around grabbing snacks and drinks. I grabbed dill pickle Lays, Rolo candies, Cheetos, some sausage sticks, beef jerky, and a Sprite and water from the cooler sections. My mom had a handful of things as well, and we went up to the counter and stood in line. While waiting to check out, I counted the cars in the parking lots and how many of each brand there were since I was super obsessed with cars back then. My mom tugged my arm a bit as the line moved up, so I followed her like the clingy 7-year-old I was. We got up to the counter, greeted the cashier, paid for our things, and left with 2 bags of snacks and drinks. I was giddy with a big grin on my face the whole time, knowing that I would be set for the rest of the trip with my rare treats. As we finished up at the counter, a black man in a red Nike hoodie, black sweatpants, black shoes, and sunglasses came into the station. I took particular notice of him because of the fact he was wearing sunglasses indoors. He walked casually up to the counter with a warm smile on his face and rested his arms on the counter. My mom noticed him as well and gave him the short, hey smile that you give strangers when you don't want to start a conversation. He didn't notice and looked over at the cashier. This is when things went south, real quick. The man playfully smacked the counter and said in a friendly tone, "Give me all your money." The cashier looked at him confused, since the man acted like he knew the cashier. The guy gave the cashier a few seconds before becoming serious, slamming his hands on the counter, pulling out a gun, and demanding money again. This time he was serious, and his demand was no longer a joke. My mom began to drag me out of the store, while I stared in confusion and almost awe at what was happening before me. She threw me into the car, not literally, but you know what I'm getting at, and quickly sped out of the parking lot. The last thing I saw of the gas station was the man putting his gun to the back of the cashier's head and yelling something inaudible to him. It's been 7 years now since this incident, and gas stations still give me a nervous, angsty vibe. Last I saw and heard, the QT had been torn down, and a new building erected in its place. I know, not the dramatic, chaotic ending some of you might have hoped for, but it was still a scary and traumatic experience for me, so I thought I might share it and see if anyone else has experienced the same or knows anything more about the incident.
I'm a 23-year-old female from the UK. When I was 18, I lived very close to a Starbucks coffee shop. It was only about 15 minutes away on foot. During this time, I had pretty bad anxiety issues due to trauma, and part of my therapy treatment was to go out for walks on my own when it was a little dark outside. I wouldn't put myself in dangerous situations or do anything stupid, but I had to get over my irrational fear of being alone outside at night. It's important to note that this story takes place when it was about 9 p.m. in the late summer months. I can't really remember if it was July or August, but it was right around that time. I guess around the time it is now. It didn't get dark until about 10:30 to 11 p.m. Anyway, the Starbucks closed at 8 p.m., and right behind it where the car park was, there was a small hotel and a gas station next to it. There was also a gas station across the street which sort of rivaled the other one. This is relevant to the story. I don't want to name the hotel or gas stations for privacy reasons, just in case someone could sleuth and figure out where this took place. I was out for a walk, and I wanted to challenge myself to stay out until at least 9:30 p.m., then I'd walk home. I don't have a lot of mobile data on my phone, but the Starbucks provided free Wi-Fi even when closed. So I ended up in one of the seating areas outside so that I could scroll through social media on my phone, and it made me feel calmer since I felt apprehensive about being out at night on my own. I sat there for a while, just minding my own business. Now, the car park was deserted. The gas station was close by and obviously had cars pulling in and out, but the customers over there couldn't see me because of the layout of everything around me. I was on my phone when suddenly I heard a loud shouting coming from the hotel. I looked up, and it was like my brain couldn't comprehend what was happening, because I sat there frozen as I watched two older men hanging out their window shouting at me. It took me a second to understand what the hell was happening, and I was horrified. They were screaming at me, trying to get my attention, saying things like,
"Hey, why don't you come over here, baby?"
Like I said, I have major anxiety issues about being out at night, especially on my own, and I was really trying to resolve those issues. I was so scared that I immediately grabbed my rucksack and got up, not even tucking the chair back into the table that I'd sat at, and I started speed walking out of the car park towards the gas station. One of the men disappeared, and the other screamed at me,
"You need to come up to our room."
After hearing this, my heart was pounding. I immediately called a family member, and I was almost crying from fear. I was only 18 years old. Yes, I was considered an adult in my country, but I still felt like a dumb teenager in a lot of ways. As a female, being accosted by these men who were insulting me and then demanding I come up to their room, well, I just knew they clearly had very bad intentions. I didn't go into the gas station because I felt unsafe, and I decided to cross the street to the other side and then go into the station over there instead. This was because my mom actually worked there, and I felt much safer going to her, where I knew she and her colleagues could protect me. The relative I was on the phone with told me to call the police, but I was way too afraid to hang up the phone, and I begged her to stay on the line with me. She agreed and tried to calm me down, telling me to go across the street. When I was crossing, I looked behind me, and the men were now following me. I couldn't believe what was happening. They looked to be in their late 20s, early 30s, and I definitely looked my age, if not younger. I took off running, not even caring if I got hit by a car, because I just knew I had to get the f away from them. I didn't dare look behind me, just in case they were running after me. I flew into the gas station and immediately ran to the cash register, and I then told my mom what was happening. One of the people working with her that night was a man who I'll call Jason. Jason was really stocky and tall, built like a tank, as it's commonly called in my country. My mom ushered me into the bathroom and told me to stay there and lock the door. Jason heard everything, and he ran out the door and into the forecourt to find the men. I was crying in relief now because I finally felt safe. My mom and a lady she worked with had tried to comfort me. Jason came back in after a few minutes, and he said the men had ran away as soon as they saw him coming. I really don't know what those men intended to do. Following me into a place people would see them seems really stupid on their part, but I know they had very bad intentions. Jason walked my mom and I home, and we never saw the men again. I assumed they just went back to the hotel. After that experience, I didn't want it to be a setback, So a week later, I walked back to that Starbucks at 9 p.m. and stood looking at the hotel. I knew that the men would have likely moved on by that point, and I needed to do that to prove to myself that I would be okay. I've dealt with my anxiety issues now, and I'm glad this experience didn't make it worse for me. It was really terrifying at the time, and I still think about it sometimes. I just know they had something horrific planned for me. I wonder just how long they watched me sitting on my phone. I'm now always aware of my surroundings, and I never get so immersed in anything that I lose sight of those around me. For all I know, they could have watched me the whole time. They could have snuck up on me, grabbed me, and done God knows what. I was really lucky they were dumbasses and decided to scream at me instead. Please stay safe, everyone, and don't make the same mistake I did. Always be aware of your surroundings, and if you find yourself in a scary situation, don't panic. Go to somewhere safe and call the police. You never know where the predators are lurking.
I work at a gas station in New Zealand, and despite the downside of dealing with difficult customers, I have genuinely always loved my job. The station I started at has a lot of homeless people or individuals who are struggling financially, even if they do have a home. One homeless man in particular has become my stalker. When I first started, my coworkers informed me that this man would come in and we would give him a free cup of hot water, which he would add some sugar sachets to. They mentioned that he's a bit strange but generally harmless, except for his tendency to swear frequently. Since he was homeless, I felt sorry for him, especially during the winter when I first heard about him, so I happily provided him with his water. However, this man wouldn't just take the water and leave. He would go on rants about all sorts of nonsense, and I could never understand what he was talking about. He used the F word every other word and spoke gibberish in between. Some of my coworkers stopped serving him as he disturbed other customers, but one other coworker and I continued to do so. Looking back, this is probably where the problem started, because he began only coming in when I was working alone. I worked from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., and he would always show up at night. He never came on my days off, which varied each week, so he must have observed and noted my work schedule by passing by during the day, which I noticed him doing often. Over time, I started feeling uncomfortable with his presence and the way he looked at me. However, being raised in a Christian family, I was reluctant to turn him away. My grandfather always told me as a child, "Manners are cheap, and never turn your back on charity." So I continued to serve him. But then he started making comments about my appearance, then my body, and he stopped asking for water. He just wanted me. He would come in, head straight towards me, and linger in the store for what felt like hours. The final straw came when he winked at me and said I always had a friend in him. The way he said it sent chills down my spine. So I decided to stop letting him in. The moment I was working alone, I locked the doors because I knew he would appear. The problem was, I knew he was watching me. I could sense it, and as soon as the last customer left the forecourt, he would approach the doors. I caught him watching me multiple times a day from alleyways and bushes. We got him trespassed, hoping it would solve the issue. Unfortunately, it didn't. He would still watch me, try to get in, and yell at me through the doors when I refused to let him in. I called the police every time he showed up, but he managed to escape each time. This went on for months on end. I was scared 24/7 at work and even had nightmares at home. There were countless incidents of harassment, attempted entries, and sightings of him watching me. But the worst one occurred when I was on forecourt duty, filling cars and cleaning the pumps. We have speakers at all pumps that are connected to an intercom inside, allowing us to communicate with customers without having to run outside. It's a large site with 12 pumps. While I was outside, I heard my coworker call me inside through the speakers, her voice filled with panic. Since it was daytime, my initial thought was that a customer was causing trouble. I quickly went inside and immediately heard the doors lock behind me. "Look over there by the bushes," she said with wide eyes. I turned to look, and there he was, peering in. The scariest part? He had one foot lunged forward, as if he was ready to run and attack the moment the doors opened. My heart sank, and I called the police, who arrived remarkably quickly. They were already there as I hung up the phone. The officer taking my statement informed me that he would be charged with criminal harassment, and a restraining order was in place. However, legally they had to issue a warning before he could be arrested, and he was released the same night. But enough was enough. I couldn't handle it anymore. I was constantly terrified. It wasn't a matter of if he would return, but when. The very next day, I handed in my 2 weeks' notice. Management didn't want to lose me and offered me a transfer to a site far away where he would never find me, or so we thought. I accepted the transfer, and the new site was great. All the staff were instructed not to disclose my new location to anyone, including the regular customers. They were told to say that I no longer worked for the company. For about 3 months, everything was peaceful. There was no sign of my stalker, and I felt safe. I no longer had to constantly look over my shoulder. However, the relief didn't last long. Just a month ago, the officer handling my case informed me that I had to appear in court and testify against him. I was terrified of seeing him again, but I convinced myself it was for the best. I had just come to terms with the fact that I could do it, and I would ensure he was held accountable. But then the worst happened. He found me at the new site. I don't know how he did it, but my best guess is that he asked a new employee at my old site, someone who wasn't aware of him, the stalking and the restraining order, and they told him. He must have taken a bus or made a remarkably long walk. He was approaching the doors quickly when I spotted him, and I ran away in a panic. I nearly knocked over my boss, who saw the fear on my face and asked what was wrong. In my state of shock and fear, I can't even remember what I said, but my manager locked us in her office and provided incredible support. She called the police and handled everything. I was trembling and in shock. We all believed I was safe at the new site, as the police officer in charge had assured us he would never find me there. While we were on the phone with the police, we witnessed him circling the site at least 3 times before the police arrived, apprehended him, and placed him under arrest. Thank God. Needless to say, I couldn't sleep for the next few days as I waited for the court date. The fear of him being released was overwhelming. 2 days before the court hearing, I prayed. I prayed that he would be convicted and that I would be safe. I honestly had no idea what I would do if he was released and knew where to find me again. This might sound dramatic, but anyone who has experienced the trauma of being stalked will understand. I even made the comment, "If he gets away, I think I'll kill myself." I genuinely felt that hopeless. Thankfully, my prayers were answered the next day when the officer handling my case called me. I've got some good news. He changed his plea to guilty. I was at work, and I jumped up and down in front of customers. This is the safest I have felt in nearly a year, which has been the longest year of my life. But for now, it's over. Well, mostly. I have a sentencing case coming up, where the duration of his sentence will be determined. But for now, I can finally relax, knowing this monster is off the streets and, most importantly, unable to come near me. Deep down, I know it's not truly over. My gut tells me that when he's released, he'll come back. This man is obsessed and mentally ill. The only thing keeping me going is the saying, "Don't borrow trouble before it shows up at your doorstep." But that's the problem. I know he'll be back at my doorstep as soon as he can. Last night, my boyfriend and I were driving home from Universal Studios in Orlando. We were rerouted a way home we've never went before, and we're traveling in basically the middle of nowhere. My boyfriend's speedometer is broken on his car, and he has to press the button to reset the miles after he gets gas. This will be very important soon. We were driving on a deserted road in the middle of absolute nowhere without a single car in sight. My boyfriend realized we hit the 130-mile mark on his odometer. We needed gas, but there was literally not one gas station in sight. I put search gas stations nearby, and we found one. It turned out to be closed. In a hurry, we found another gas station 5 minutes up the road. This is where the story gets weird. My boyfriend thought he closed his gas cap and were once again driving along this deserted road. We heard a loud bang and he realized he forgot to put the gas cap back on, so we're driving around this dark road looking for the gas cap. He finally pulls over and realizes somehow the gas cap is still attached to the car. We get back on track to the other gas station. Out of nowhere, I had a horrible thought about something going wrong at that gas station. I pushed it aside because I knew we needed gas and AAA is not an option where we were at the moment. We get to this gas station and the lights are kind of on. This road literally leads to a dead end with a gas station on it. The only way to leave this area was to turn left or go straight out of the gas station. My boyfriend got out of the car to see if we could get gas and the feeling intensified. I have literally never felt like that in my life. My stomach dropped into my butt. I have been in very disturbing situations such as almost being kidnapped twice, being followed home, watching someone be taken away in a body bag after being hit by a car, and even a paranormal situation. But I have never felt like this before. I saw a white car pulling up to the road to make a left. Keep in mind, there is literally no one on this road. He pulls up and notices my boyfriend and backs up with his windows down. I found this very strange because my boyfriend has a very nice sports car, and my mind immediately went into panic mode. I started screaming his name, and the man realized that someone else was in the car, turned left and sped off. Sadly, I didn't get his license plate because of how dark it was. This situation frightened me more than you can even imagine. It may not seem too scary, but it was easily one of the most terrifying things to watch, because I didn't know if I was going to witness my boyfriend being robbed at gunpoint or something like that. The feeling and thought I had just 10 minutes earlier is what also made the situation even worse. We found a gas station with actual human life around, and we made it home safe and sound. Once I got home, my dad told me that the road we were driving on was famous for the many bodies being found on it. I hope no one ever gets put into this situation. And to the man who was planning to do something to my boyfriend, let's never meet.
This happened to me when I was 19. For some context, I'm a guy. I was working at my overnight job at a 24-hour gas station, and it was about 1 in the morning, and I was just sitting at the register minding my own business when this guy walks in. He approached the counter, and he had asked for a guy that he knows. Keep in mind, I know that guy as well. I know the guy that came up to the counter as a former classmate that I graduated with, and I told him the guy he was asking for wasn't there. He said that I was lying. Then he took out a gun and pointed it right at me. He then told me to tell him where he's at, or he's opening fire. I once again told him that he wasn't here. Then he actually came behind the counter and put the gun right up to my head, then saying,
"Tell me where he is, or you die."
Also, keep in mind that the guy who had the gun to my head was someone from school that everyone couldn't stand. I was just frozen. I didn't know what to do. I told him for the 3rd time that he wasn't here and that I don't know where the hell he's at. My heart was racing to what felt like 1,000,000 miles a second. Then thankfully, a cop walked inside the gas station surprisingly, and then screamed at the guy to drop the gun and step away with his hands up. The guy was arrested. After this happened, I immediately ran to the bathroom to take the biggest shit I probably ever have in my life. I know that's not the point, but I felt such relief after it was all over. After I finished up in the bathroom, I went to the counter and I thanked the officer for taking care of that guy. My boss saw how scared I was, and they said I could leave for the night if I wanted to for my safety. So that's what I did. I clocked out, and I then went home safe and sound. I quit that job the very next day. I told the guy from school about our classmate with the gun and what happened. He was really glad that I didn't tell him where he was, because apparently they had some really bad blood. Needless to say, I'm never working overnights again.
One of the most chilling moments of my whole life was while working at 7-Eleven. Some guy walks in wearing a suit, staggers over to one of the fridges and grabs a ton of those Starbucks cold brews out of one of them before dumping them all on the counter in front of me. The stink of booze off of him was just wild, and as I'm ringing him up, I asked if he'd either had a really good day or a really bad one. He's let out this really hearty laugh and then tells me, "A little of both." He then goes on to explain that he'd just gotten out of court, and that he's been acquitted of accidentally shooting one of his hunting buddies on a trip that happened a few years ago. I was so stunned that I didn't really know what to say. I just went with the first thing that came to mind, which was, "I'm sorry." He laughs again, shakes his head, and then asks me, "You know what the funniest thing is, though?" I shake my head, taking the 10 he gave me before grabbing his change from the register, and when he tells me, I swear I almost dropped his money all over the floor when he spoke. He tells me, "It was no accident." Then just starts laughing to himself while he pockets the change and scoops up all the cold brews from the counter. I was so taken aback that all I could do was just stand there, watching the guy as he walked out of the store and towards his parked car. Then my mind switches to thinking, please get into the passenger seat, please get into the passenger seat. But nope, He climbs right into the driver's side, starts the engine, then drives off. I'm not saying I have a photographic memory or anything, more like I was repeating his license plate number back to myself as I grabbed my phone and plugged it into the Notepad app. Then I called the cops, told them they had a drunk driver on their hands, then just let karma do its thing. There was nothing I could do about him taking one person's life and getting away with it. But I sure wasn't about to stand by and let him kill someone else as the result of being a reckless idiot. One of the worst days of my life came right out of nowhere. I was working in my job at a local 7-Eleven, just burning away the daylight hours with no passion in life, no purpose, no nothing. Then suddenly, I feel this terrible headache coming on. I take a few painkillers, then got back to what I was doing. Some customer comes in, I ring them up for a coffee and a pack of donuts, and then that's the last thing I remember. I woke up in the hospital, and the nurses were prepping me for surgery. I was told I'd been diagnosed with a bleed in my brain and that the surgery would involve drilling a hole in my skull to drain the fluid. Then, just as they were about to put me under, the head of neurology got in touch with someone and called off the surgery completely. What actually happened is that I'd suffered an aneurysm, and according to my doctor, who told me this much later on, I would have probably been dead on the table just seconds after the surgery commenced. With a brain bleed, the solution is to drill holes in your skull, which relieves pressure and prevents your brain from swelling up and squeezing against your skull. If it does that, it can lead to some pretty serious brain damage, which is obviously very bad news. But in the case of an aneurysm, which is what is actually going on, that kind of surgery can prevent sufficient blood flow to your brain due to the sharp drop in blood pressure in your brain tissue. This then basically starves your brain of oxygen, leading to acute tissue death, which obviously just straight up kills you. That head of neurology legitimately saved my life that day, and the whole thing dramatically changed my outlook on life. A person can still feel perfectly healthy, perfectly normal, and then one little weak blood vessel in your brain and boom, it can all be over for them. Life is a terrifyingly fragile thing, one that can really just end at any moment. I quit my job at the 7-Eleven when I was recovering in the hospital, then asked my dad and mom if they could put me up in my old bedroom while I trained to be a comic book artist. They thought my choice of career was a little outlandish, and I don't blame them, but I think the shock of almost losing me to some random medical thing made them reevaluate a few things too. These days, I work as a full-time comic book artist, and although I don't make a ton of money, I feel like I'm actually living the life I want to, the one I was supposed to live, not one that's being dictated to me by my need for money or prestige or acceptance. I suppose I'm telling you all this because I hope everyone on Earth can live that way too, and it honestly breaks my heart that some people don't have a choice in the matter, because the idea that someone's life could just end while they were working some terrible retail job or doing just about anything they didn't want to do, I don't just find it heartbreaking, I find the concept utterly terrifying. Probably because I was just one surgery away from that exact same thing happening to me.